Oh, het is een zenselijk bedankt voor de DNS. Ja, no.
Je kunt doen zins.
Ja,
Dus dan slaffen gewoon?
Je hebt een ooggestopt.
Slaffen gewoon. Alright. En doe je eens?
nee,
Dat is geslagen.
Wie zijn ze gegaan?
een
Een Wasser. Shurikens.
Weißt was? In Polen, wenn die kehren früher, ist das nicht also viel geschlafen? Wir fliegen nach in den Kanal mit dem Namen. Ich gedenke, nein, ich hatte der angeschrieben, ist auch ganz noch jeder Mensch, da weiß ein paar nach. Da weiß beiden schon was.
Wie zijn het geweest?
A loose translation is, he used to take me walking very late at night in lodge. And his father said, if he did that again, he was throwing out of the house while I was there.
He told him in Polish.
He told him in Polish, but I got the message. And so did he. Jetzt schläft as I say. Right. So what is it you want to know? Oh, we should first identify ourselves. We are sitting here. We're not the only ones, but we're the only ones here. Are the grandchildren of a common ancestor we have decided to designate today as the focal point. We are the grandchildren of Yehuda Leib Winograd and his wife Bracha, whose maiden name was Wengel. I have been told an astonishing thing just recently, that they married when she was 14 and he's 17. I cannot resist putting this in. And you're right, that was it.
It was a great love affair.
It was
She met him at the hood.
Anyhow, here we are, and the descendants here, this is a special occasion because Mata, who is here, doesn't come often. He's from Munich, and he is the son of Yehuda Leib named Yaakov. Here's Jack, who lives in Denver, who is the son of Esther, a daughter of the same couple. And two of us are siblings of the same father and mother, Harold and Eleanor, whose father is Abe, remains Abe. So
remains.
So all of your parents were brother and sister, right?
Right. But only three parents were represented here, since Harold and I had the same parents.
That's
Okay,
right.
I want to make that.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Where's Larry, by the way?
He's alive yet, but he still fits that same description, the same.
No,
Different mother.
Same mother. But
Same
same
father.
father. On the Winograd side. That's right.
His chair is right there.
Elijah's.
What's supposed to be with it? What would you all like to know?
Well,
Start with.
starting with what I would like to know.
Yeah.
So,
Sie will gewollt wissen, was hat ihr getan? Vater Mohammed. Kassenle. Du bist gewesen doch ein junger Mann. Du bist doch gewesen ein sehr junger Mann. Ja, 1936, wenn ich bin dort gewesen. Was hast du getan? Gearbeitet? A fabric. Explain.
now can you translate what you just
He said he had a factory in 1936. The question I asked him, for example, when I was there in 1936, what did you do? He said, I had a factory. He was 21, I became 20 that year. Dit is alleen de wijn, de eigentümer van de fabriek, ze beschouwt van het gewoon. Twee Schiffen, niet schuiven. Zo lang. He almost forgot he says. He believes he had two partners, and he doesn't think they were related. They were not
And
family.
what was the factory?
Oh, was ist, wenn da Betriebe
Textile.
Not knitting.
I remember I was a boy, a young boy of 14, 15. I used to come up to his factory and help him. He used to need some help in doing like threading needles, a special thing in textile work. Now I guess it's a different system, probably goes automatically. But in those days, we had to thread needles by hand. So he would, let's say, push in, and I would have to pull it out from the other side. There were thousands of needles.
You mean the needles along the looms?
Along the loom. You know, those little, the shafts that go up and down, or the needles up and down, you know. And then that bobbin would run, the bobbin would run back and forth. Rijden. Rijden. En die is, ja, je gaat hem geholpen. And then the bobbin, you know, was running back and forth, you know. So those needles. Dus später, wenn ich noch das für die Schau benennt, ich habe noch wel um so 16, 17 Jahre, bis hier auch gewesen. 16, halb in 16.
16, ich bin gewählt bald 20. Und weißt du
Dat
was?
is nog später. Nog meer dan je später.
Ich habe gesehen, dein Vater.
Ja, dat was een
Keiner hat nicht gearbeitet, und es war bei Nacht, das wird genommen sein. Ein größten Zimmer. One large room. I saw his factory when I was there in 1936.
They were actually weaving.
They actually wove textiles. When I went there, they were closed for the night. There were large rows of machinery, and according to Jack, they were still handled by hand. Apparently, the bobbins.
See, I'm not going to give you a lecture on textiles, but if you saw a loom, if you notice a loom, the things that go up and down, through these things that look, the shuttle, right? And a shuttle like this has like hundreds of needles. It's sort of like a wire with a little needle with an eye in the middle.
So they
and
threaded
the
them
thread would go down. So there were a few shuttles, different ones. One time this would go up, and when those would when it would go up, would bring up an amount of threads, right? And the bobbin would go through like this.
Shuttle across.
And then there was a bar, what they call it, I don't know, that you know, tight, right?
And were the employees Jewish? How many employees? And were they Jewish employees or Polish employees?
Dat kan je nog niet gehouden. De meeste boys christelijke gooien. Eén vrouw had gehouden op 4 machines. En mannen, meestal gewinnen met vrouwen. One woman would work on four looms. And while the looms were working, she would just keep an eye on them. If a thread broke, she would stop it and then tie it out better.
Was this woolens or synthetic or cotton?
There was no synthetic, it was cotton mostly. Cotton.
People.
One second, I took a...
And really, it wasn't primitive. I thought it was state of the art to this day.
It was very primitive compared to today, because I was 3 years ago I was in South America in Uruguay, and my friend has a modern factory down there, and it's just unbelievable. In the olden days, those bobbins were being pushed back and forth through like little arms, an arm with the motor will push like this and would push that thing back and forth. Nowadays they go by air. Those bobbins, little bobbins that carry the thread back and forth by air. Yes, yeah.
Sag mal, eigens gekonnten Fabrik. Was ist dir getan? Keine Schule, was ist Was war eine Schule? Es gewinnt dort eine jüdische Schule damals, zu alle gleich. Before, I asked what he did before he owned this factory. He did go to school, and it was a Jewish school, a jüdische Schule. Sag mal, hat jüdische Schule?
Was it
Not
religious?
Oh,
Not
no.
religious.
This is because the Polish system had Jewish schools, and non-Jewish
No,
schools.
they were public.
Yeah, they were private, they were private, so that was.
Oh, yeah.
So there was no religious education.
Es ist nicht gewählt religiös, speziell.
Sie gehen nach Schule, was
Oh, you could get some secular.
One of the subjects was religion. It was a public school.
Public school bin ich eigentlich.
No.
Public gegangen.
Wie viele Gegenden sind gegangen? The public school.
Hier bei mir, wait a minute. Bloisieden, the letters in Wenigkeit Norte. The public school that I went to, it was just, it wasn't co-educational. The public school, and the students were all Jews. The teachers, some of them were non-Jews, some teachers, but most of them were Jews, and the students were all Jews.
All boys.
All boys, right.
And what did you study?
All subjects, Polish, mathematics, history, geography, all these, physics, all these subjects.
High school.
No. Elementary school. Elementary school.
Was hat mir jeden
Jo, noch
gehabt?
nicht, bei mir bei Konstanten. Bloisidische Kinder.
Was hat mir jeden gehabt, er hat private Schule, so das kennt kein in a public.
Sie gewesen jüdische Gymnasium, sie gewesen.
But
There were Jewish.
die jüdische Gehille gestützt ein jüdische Gymnasium.
High schools were not free. High
High
school,
school.
elementary school was free.
High school.
Seven grades was free. And then after that, if somebody could afford it, he went to high school. For instance, he went to high school in Gymnasium Stil. But he was done by Shakinet. I didn't go to high school. But whoever could afford
Went to high
school. I have a friend who lives now in Florida, and they were very poor. His father was a locksmith, so he did repairs for the Hebrew school. It was a Hebrew Jewish, high school, but the school couldn't afford to pay him, so they said, "Send your boy to school." So he's the only one from our gang, the poorest boy, who went to high school.
Because
We
his
didn't.
father worked out his
Yeah.
tuition. Wojtek went to high school.
He went to high school, right?
Yeah. Das
All
Gymnasium.
of his,
Nicht gehen. Was ist passiert, bis das nicht gehen? He got ulcers. Thanks on ulcers. He got ulcers. His stomach was no good, and he quit school. And then what was his
And what?
High school und noch gewinnt andere. Sie hätten eine ganze Wahrscheinlich. Nicht erst High school. Ist nicht gegangen.
high school?
Nein. Einmal. Ich habe gekriegt, aber es war nicht gut. Sie gewinnen High school gegangen. Das hat uns gekriegt, dann ist eine Geschichte, dann ist nicht so gut. High school sind keine Menschen, ich habe gekriegt.
That cat is very
Mein Tat, ich weiß, was geheißen hat.
He says in the high schools, people went around.
Let me clarify with him. I'm high school, Mike-Lobenski Gymnasium.
Jo, ich bin gar nicht von diesem Tugend.
Auch ihr bin ich gar nicht Gymnasium, das Gymnasium auf die Kioskeri.
So ich das du. Aber die Kind ging nach Schule, in einer Volksschule, das hat nicht gekostet.
Ja.
Und bei uns sind alle Kinder gegangen in die Schule, so gekostet.
Yeah, all of them went to high school.
He says his family was well enough off, so I think.
What did his father do?
He had a sugar business. Oh, fantastic cat, but
Zucker
business. Stationary, because of
Zucker.
remember?
In Polen wird Zucker ein Monopol.
A monopoly. In Poland, sugar was a monopoly.
Nicht jeder kennt Handel mit Zucker.
But they had become
Nicht er, hat eine ganze Company. Eine größere Sachen.
Yeah.
Shit von
Shit
Sachen.
for
yeah.
Shit.
There were
Wir kommen Adam, nehmen wir auf Zucker.
So they found the privilege of handling
Und
sugar.
das Handeln von Zucker geht nicht in Krähen.
exact. Yeah, they were wholesalers,
Wholesalers.
distributors, Hotognikers.
Yeah.
Bei den Zucker, kannst du dir vorstellen, ein Sack Zucker von 100 Kilo, der verdient eine Mark. Ein Sack, ein Kilo Zucker kann er zu bewahren, hat gekostet wie 100 Kilo Zucker eine Mark.
Ein Zlote.
Ein Zloty.
Das ist billig.
Ein Kilo Zucker,
The billig. And it's nicht billig. It's nicht
Give
billig.
us an example, what did
I'll
it
give you an example. I'll accept a kilo chicken was one zloty. For that zloty, you could buy 20 Kaiser dolls.
And a kilo is 2
For
pounds.
one kilo sugar was the equivalent of 20 Kaiser dolls.
So
So
you would say it was expensive?
Expensive. Like a dollar, officially a dollar was like 5 zlotys and 20 groschen. So sugar was expensive, right?
In school, did you speak Yiddish or Polish in the school?
Not school Polish. Yiddish,
No.
Polish in schools.
Schools.
And were there schools for girls?
Wij zijn Nederland gegaan, nee, no, not education.
No, but there were
Separate schools.
And did the girls go to school?
Of course.
Yeah,
Separate and equal.
that was
Yeah.
just under the public schools.
Yes.
Like this, but middle schools.
Yeah, there was a school, there was no co-education.
Did either of you go to Hader? Hebrew or Yiddish?
Oh yeah, I went out and maybe even gaan Heide, some gaan Heide.
Ja, das ist nicht gehabt von Bar Mitzvah.
Aber mit Snap, ja.
Jo.
Nein, das ja.
Oh, ja.
Aber das ist nicht gegangen, das Fehler, so was leider mit Reden.
Gelernt Schule.
Oh, in Schule.
Een dagschool, niet bij een
She went to a Jewish school, so he did some studying of Hebrew things in
Oh,
his,
bank.
In his elementary school.
Ja,
in
maar
his
ik
high school.
So
that's one of the subjects.
And did they both have bar mitzvah?
Damen op de
Maar nee,
gelaat.
dat had ik
Nee, oh, en bij een dat nu ook.
Ja, ja.
Aha.
But then
So,
was the Daven
he went to a high school
to his high
Jewish
school, it was
school
Jewish.
where they were teaching that Hebrew classes too. They taught how to pray.
Like a day school.
And
So
But
in
no,
one-
my school no. My school no. I went
This
to
is
Heder when I was a kid, starting maybe 6, 7 years. I started in Heder after school.
And
I
that's
used
how
to
you
have to
prepared
go.
for Bar Mitzvah.
so
Yeah.
he learned his Jewish things in school and you learned your Jewish things in Jewish school.
Just like today.
Yeah.
Some go to day
Yeah.
school and
And some
some.
go to public school and Hebrew school after.
And it
Was
was
Lodge-
cheaper not to go to day school.
Was it divided? Did the Jews live in one part and the Christians in the other part?
Most of the time, yes, there were Jewish sections.
He
Where
went to
there
the
were
school until he was 14.
the Christians most of the time were the janitors. Could be an apartment house. See, the apartment houses were closed in boxes, like, and every house would have had like 20, let's say 20, 30 apartments. Most of them were Jewish. And most of the time, the janitor was non-Jewish. He was like, you say, a Shabbos goy. Shabbos, to make light the oven or something, so he would come up. But most of the houses, they were Jews. My size.
And was it a
no eat.
Was it a shtetl in the sense of having, like in Russia, there was no, was it a ghetto or?
No, there were no ghettos.
No.
There were no ghettos.
In
There
Warsaw,
was a concentration of Jews. This was a huge city of
in
Warsaw.
Warsaw, there was a ghetto. Yeah?
Well, no, not called ghetto. I went there every day of my life, and I was there for 5 days. It was open and closed. People went out to work.
But there were walls around the Jewish sector, right?
Where?
In
In
Warsaw.
Warsaw, they had a gate. It was a Yiddish section, but it
But-
wasn't a closed
but
gate.
part of it is that they had an, there was at one point, was it an Eruv?
real ghetto.
Was it an Eruv?
No, in Warsaw, there was a Jewish neighborhood.
The
where
Jewish
Jews lived,
section. They said you go through the gate, that's where
Yeah, there were no fences or gates on the day.
New York,
Yeah, Williamsburg, you have a section that Jews
like
live.
it's a
That's how
section.
like in Denver, you had the west side, where the Jewish
In
neighborhood.
1936, I was stuck in Warsaw at a place called the Hotel Francuska, may it rot,
Francuski, yeah.
waiting
Probably got
for-
bombed.
waiting for my suitcase, which did not arrive till someone told me to bribe the station master. So every day for 5 days they told me how to go to the Jewish section, which I went to explore there, and I could go through a gate. But that was only directions, I guess, other ways. But I visited Chaim Schmitz's relatives one day, and I had a haircut in Yiddish. I had haircuts in every language. And I went every day. But it was definitely a Jewish section, there's no question. It was a Jewish
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
A Jewish world in that.
And Lodge was like that too.
When you
Yeah.
say it was a Jewish world, what do you mean? What was
Well,
that?
I didn't live there.
So I'll give you a small example. For instance, in Lodge.
Signs were Jewish.
For instance, in Lodge, in the Jewish neighborhood where most of the Jews lived, at the time of Kol Nidra, you could see hardly a person in the street.
Like New York on Yom Kippur.
Kol
That's a
Nidra
Jewish
s'avonds,
world.
is alleen in de jongen, in onze gegend.
That's
But then after Kol Nidra, after David,
Ja, der ist
it's
damals geboren.
a point of schmees, because
It's like the east side.
and that's a point of projection. Nee,
Except more so.
oh, nee.
Da wollte man nicht gesehen.
No, die eerste gezien had de slushy mee aangekomen. No problem. And then after the services, it was marked, the whole. But this was the Jewish section.
Yeah, you know, Yivo has put out a
New
film
York, Brooklyn, dann
on
mit
Jews of old Poland before the war that if you haven't seen, you ought to. You'll really get a feel for it. It's not our family, it's anybody's family.
The Lodge.
But I want to tell you, the streets they show, the Yivo shows on this film by the famous filmmaker, who actually I forget, could have been a description of my, it was like the street I walked on. There's no question, it's identical. That's the street I walked on in 1936. That happens to be 55 years ago.
Jack,
55 years ago.
Oh, yes, gelijk.
What they describe, what they show in the movie is exactly how Poland looked in my day.
Lodge
It was,
gehad.
it was a enormous build-on. That was the, not the steppe,
Dat zie je wel eens.
but that was the world of Eastern European Jewry. Its cradle, its cultural center with its theaters and its newspapers and its barber shops.
Die
And its
draaf,
all the language was Yiddish. The people were all collected. By the way, Muttick said some time ago that he ended his school that he described at 14
Jo,
and ended a technical
No,
school where he learned the trade of for the craft or skill of weaving. Remember that he bought factories at 14.
Kennis van Jack, die als de betraaf.
All right, now,
Je kent dat niet zo.
we have a
you
little.
invaded
Lodge gehad 750 Leute, das kennis. Dat is
Lodge gehad?
750
was
That's more like your
This is not
He
possible.
disagrees.
This is given on Rice.
Ja, aber sie, Denver hat heute eine halbe gebaut.
No, Denver and the surrounding.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell the funniest story you can remember from Lux? Each of you
What?
tell the funniest story that you can remember of something that
Van
happened.
hoe raw? Good thanks.
Heb je zo'n humoristische zaak
is passiert.
In
En
Lodge.
was er geen humoristische zaak passiert. In de Mohammed.
Dus
Ich habe gegeben nur einen Brief, wo es der Vetter, was mein Vater geschrieben einen Brief zu Deitern, aber den Brief. Als Sie mehr wissen, wie ich mir die 10 ganzen Buch von dem Brief.
He says if you look at the correspondence, which I have and I've shared with between his father and mine, you will know more about what happened there than anything he could tell you all day, and that is God's truth. I was going over a lot of them again. I paid to have some of them translated because the handwriting is not Dad's, but people who wrote to him. I could hardly do it. And some things are, you really get a feeling for the culture, so-called. Some things were very disappointing to you because it wasn't a very elegant culture, a lot of it. These were times before the war that Poland was activating economics. They were in a depression crisis in Poland. Jeden Wort, was dann Vater gestimmt, mein Vater, hat noch gehabt, Panossa ein bisschen in the Zuckerbusiness, was gewähnt, wie schlecht es ist. Every word his father wrote to my father, for instance, was how dreadful the economy was. And dann noch einmal gefragt, mein Vater, wie geht bei den Geschäften? Verkaufst immer? And how's business with you, he wrote my father. This is the, I would say, the late 20s. Late 20s, it was already very bad. He would ask Dad, how's your business? What are you doing now? And then later read other letters. But the flavor of what Poland was for the Jew in that time, of course you can get it through the correspondence. I want to ask them something. this nicht gekannt, the Bobbenzäge von Bialas.
You know the Schieben.
He did not know our grandparents in Biala.
I don't
Isn't
remember
that
them.
interesting? Aber das ist der Gegend. Seine Mutter zu Gast. They were as guests in this house, but Jack doesn't remember
Then
them.
again a lodge. Bob mit den Seiten.
Yeah, no, was a photograph.
I don't remember. I
He
don't
was nicht
remember.
gewesen in Biala.
Nee.
They never went to Biala. His sister Tosha went to Biala when I visited in 1936. She went with me. And that was the first time she had ever been in Biala. I find that very difficult to comprehend. We think of it as the same country, you know, Poland here. But there it was, Biala, and they had none of them been to visit from Lodz. There is a letter, es ist der Jehovah Brief von den Zazeden, aber schreibt wie der Bobbe, es gewinnt es folgen Walsche, sein Adopter. I have a letter from our grandfather who describes to my father that our grandmother, his wife, was sick, apparently sick enough to look for a specialist in Warsaw, and that she stayed there with Esther, Chaim Yosef's sister, in Warsaw, that she stayed with a cousin, a granddaughter of hers, in a little apartment that I remember in Vasha, but she doesn't say. He says nothing about being in Lodz at that time.
No.
But apparently they came on state occasions.
So how many?
Fight is Biala from Lodz.
Dat kent 8 kilometer. Nog daar is het onderzoek geweest in de 20 en de 30 kilometer. Ja, en dus nog kent als je nog in de kilometer van waar je nog Biala.
Ja, is gewend wie weit.
52 kilometer.
150 miles.
150 miles.
And with transportation as it was,
That was a big
didn't have
trip.
the auto. I went by train. It was a day's trip, sort of, in 1936.
How many of the brothers and sisters stayed in Biala, and how many were in Lodz? And
Well,
who
they
was-
weren't specifically in Biala. As a matter of fact, they were not born in Biala, the older generation. They were born in a town called Yajvin. I found that out. And later, our grandparents moved to Biala, if you will, in retirement. In Yajvin, they had land, which I didn't think was possible. But in some of the correspondence, they speak of selling off land. Remember, I read you, and it seemed very unlikely that it was true. Because Dave remembered. But it wasn't how many stayed in Biala and how many didn't. They married in small villages all the way around. I had an aunt in a place called Shedlitz, and someone else. We had, my grandfather had a sister, Mizrich. Es ist gewesen als Schwester und die Shedlitz went Fagin, Fagin Hirschfeld. Sie geheiratet an Alman, she married a widower, and it's crazy. Seine gewesen seine Sicht. Anyhow, nach Deutschland in Biala. The Zatorskis are gewesen in Biala, und gewesen bei Svej. Biala, das ist nicht gewesen in Biala. Mit der Schwester.
Can they maybe describe something about what they can recall of family life? You know, like the
Das will
family.
wissen, kannst du denken, what they did every day.
Family
Es
life.
gewesen dein Familienleben mit der Tante Mama, mit der Schwester, mit deinem Bruder. Mit aufgestanden da früh, mit dem, weißt du was, ein Gäste Frühstück. Oh, they got up, they ate breakfast. I started. I know, I was there.
Okay.
Bacon and eggs.
Bigger than eggs.
Done up? Yeah. Done up?
I remember, and I didn't go, I never went to Biala to see my grandparents, but I remember the year that war broke out in 1939, my mother and my 2 sisters, the ones who live in Israel, Fela and Famila, and my nephew, I had an older sister, her name was Kenya, she was born in 1940.
A little older than I.
Yeah, she was born, I had also an older brother who was born in 1916. He died in the ghetto of hunger. As a matter of fact, he died on D-Day, June the 6th, 1944. He died of starvation. And my sister Henya, with her little boy, I don't remember now, little Cedric, how old he was, they were sent out in 1942 to an extermination camp. So my mother, my two sisters, and this little nephew, they went to Biala for the summer in 1939. And they came back shortly before the Germans invaded. Shortly before the Germans invaded Poland. So they went for the summer, and that's the first and only time that they met the grandparents. But I never met them.
Just go back.
Jeszcze musimy na kleina Wojciech strzec angielski.
No,
He doesn't remember.
I don't remember ever seeing the rest of the family. For instance, the cousins like Esther, there were those first cousins. There was a sister, Javi. Then there was Javi and Zipporah and Haniosel and Esther, right? So they all came to Lodge and they all stayed with us.
So you didn't know that?
Them I knew. First Javi, she was a millinery worker.
These are sisters.
A beautiful woman, a
Whose children
beautiful
were this?
girl.
These are first cousins of ours.
Yeah.
From another
aunt, another sister. Another
Which sister?
And the Javi, did you know Javi committed suicide?
Yes.
Yeah, she fell in love with some kind of a nobody, a tailor, a hunchback. She fell in love with him, and for some reason, I don't know what happened, she committed suicide.
Do you know what the family said there? The family said that she committed suicide because she grieved so over her mother who was dying of cancer.
Oh, so then later Haniosel came to Lodge, and he was about to be 21.
Their family name was Zuckerman.
Zuckerman, yeah. And I remember he came to Lodge, he stayed with us, and I remember I would wake up in the middle of the night, and he would pacing the floor. It was before he had to go to the army, to the doctor, to the draft, yeah, to conscription. So he paced the floor, and I remember he was drinking lemon juice in order not to have enough weight, you know, to escape the draft.
It's a upset
Haniosel had gemoshet, dat is gewoon kein
whatever that means.
Gemoshet.
It means to take off weight like
Yeah, he tried like he fasted. Like he fasted.
To be too skinny.
Right.
Did he succeed?
Yeah. So I remember I was a kid.
Yeah,
he was, and at that time
but that's all right. He didn't know that they wouldn't take him in.
Yeah. So and then he went to Palestine, and then the younger sister Esther, she had at that time a little boy. They lived in Warsaw, and her husband was a Schlemazel.
It's called a Luftmensch.
Yeah, he couldn't make a living, so he decided he'll go overseas, and he went to Uruguay, to Montevideo. And so she was left alone, so she came to Lodge, and she stayed with us. Don't forget, we were 5 children in the house, and mother, because my father died when I was 10 years old. And she came with a little boy, and we all stayed in the same apartment. And I don't remember how long he stayed in Montevideo, but shortly before the war, he came back on a cattle ship. He couldn't afford to come back on a regular. Somehow he scraped enough money to come back on a cattle ship. And I saw her, the last time I saw her, when he saw her. When the Germans already came to Lodge, and he escaped to Warsaw, and then to Russia. I escaped to Warsaw, and then I went back to Lodge. Because
would he tell something with his escape?
Can you tell, like, what happened as the Germans were coming to Lodge, and then what you did?
Well, I'll tell you what I know. When the Germans came in, before even the Germans came in, we able-bodied men, we started running away towards Warsaw. So I
You knew
remember,
before that they were coming across the border? You knew
oh yeah,
before
we knew they were already
All
on the
the Poles
march.
knew.
Yeah, they were already on the march.
Bombed the hell out of Warsaw.
So we started running away. So I was there, my brother-in-law and my brother, and I remember.
Why did you run to-
Isaac is ook een geloof.
Ze verwaasd. Waar was het nu geloof nog was?
Maar gezegd aan de Duitse.
Het is een beetje.
Je hebt het zijn vermaakt.
Weet je, zijn zij.
Ja.
Ich kenne auch die Mann, also wenn der bekommen Whisky braucht. In 3, in 5 Tagen, ich will Deutsch für die Deutsch. In 5 Tagen.
His memory is that after the war broke out, the Germans had lunch in 5 days.
Wieso gemacht die Mobilisation, so eine Stunde im Zigin, und so geht das ist schon die Deutschen gewesen.
Why lots so
In der
quickly?
Stadt, wegen
They started marching.
Was it close? It was
Was it
close to the
close to
border.
the border? Was it close to the border?
After the Germans crossed the border,
Yes.
they
The
just got
Russians and the Germans got together and divided Poland in 1939.
Right.
And verstehst du?
And the Nazis attacked Poland.
Also wie so ungeheuer bekommen, haben schon die polnische Armee schon gesagt und schon gegeben, aber durch die Radio sie geben, als alle müssen Soldaten gewesen, du müssen gehen, du, in alle müssen gehen, du, sonst würde ich gar keinen richtigen Platz, ich bin
Their army was destroyed, the authorities
The
was
Polish army.
divided. This is the
Yeah,
Polish
they
army.
did put up resistance, but it was
At
like.
first, but on the radio, they gave orders, you go here, you go there. They gave places to
No,
run.
no, mostly they said to go to Warsaw,
To Warsaw.
to defend Warsaw. Obrony Warszawy.
Now, when you ran away to Warsaw, did your family encourage you to run away? What was happening in Lodz with the rest of the family?
Ich bin Männer, wenn es gewiss, ob man gehabt dies wegen Mobilisation, dies haben wir ungeheuer, gerade prima verschiedene Produkte, Männer,
Sie bist gegangen für Mobilisation, für die Soldaten, meinst du?
nicht gegangen direkt, aber so schon gerufen.
They were calling people, the young men, to mobilize.
So mobilized to run to Warsaw to
save
defend Warsaw,
Warsaw.
the
To
capital.
defend Warsaw. These were radio.
This is Polish radio asking
Yeah,
all
yes,
young
yeah,
people.
All young men.
Before
So
the Germans took it
you asked
over.
why they ran to Warsaw, and this is right.
And then, what did your mother say when you were going? Was this
Ich
considered
bin
something?
ungeheuer immer gegangen, in die ganz ihre mein Bruder.
He and his brother.
Ja,
Bei uns, genoeg. Maar weg te zoeken. Dan is er met gelopen hier, met moeilijke gemaakt. Ik denk dat ze me daar is voor je. Die zijn zo op de dienst gelopen. So we started running away. Our mother, the mothers encouraged us because they said that the men will be suffering under the Germans. So the men started running away. But in this case, this was right in the first days of September. The Germans crossed probably already, and then we decided to run away. We started marching towards Brzezin, towards a place called Brzezin.
By what means did you go?
We walked. So we had to walk in the ditches because the whole highway, so to speak, the road, was full of military, with horses, and the way everything was horses most of the time. Was full, and we had to walk in the ditches.
This is Polish military?
Yeah, Polish military was running away from Lodz towards Warsaw. Polish military. And I'll never forget, we went through a small village that was occupied by ethnic Germans, and they were shooting from the houses at the Polish military. Die weiß ich wegen dem.
Ethnic Germans were waiting.
Denkt u nog, wat zullen er geweest zijn op weg als regime? Zullen een Duitse mensen, een Duitse boys, zullen die schossen nog willen steken in de hazen? The Deutsch. Then it's ontploffen. So when we came into this place, Brzezin, on the way towards Warsaw, we came in, it was already, maybe 10 o'clock at night. And for some reason, I don't know what happened, the Germans started dropping flares. It got light as during the day. And they were starting shooting from all sides.
Well, the flare was to light up the target.
And the road, I'm telling you, the road was packed with Polish military. So it was such a panic And we saw, where are you going to, so we decided we're going to go back. We came only to this place, and we started walking back. And on the way back, I remember we saw, you know, dead bodies laying there. And we finally got back, and this was just in the beginning.
Back to Lodge.
Back to Lodge. We came back to Lodge.
Did you find your homes again?
We went back to our families. And I'm pretty sure that we ran away before the Germans came into Lodge. Inside my gelaufen noch Eide. Because before the Germans came in, and then I remember when we came back to Lodge, maybe a day later, I remember being on the main square there. Had wel dat Zeit op plaats van Lodge ben ik geweest. A German soldier, a single German soldier, came in on a motorcycle, all dirty, you know, on a motorcycle, came in and came to a fire station, parked his motorcycle there, and went in as if he was from there, as if he knew what he was doing. He must have been an ethnic German from Poland.
He knew the territory.
He knew the territory, because he went in there, we saw, we looked to the cracks in the fence, he went over, there was a basin with water, you know, in the washtub there. Ik kan niet vergessen, als Stražak, dat gedenkt zich met Stražak, wie dat zei, want ik zo vaak alleen op plaats van dat Stražak meer was. Ja, gedenk, ik heb met ze voeren aan Deutsch. Eine der ersten Deutsche raak nog een motorcykel, spitzig, aangevoerd op plaats van Nashi, en dan aangevoerd dort in de park, de wegstende motorcykel, en dan raak in de wijn, ik heb ook geen Volksdeutsch, Deutsch. Gewiss wie er gaat, de kant zie ik dort zijn hoofd gewaschen. I'll never forget that. He was, see all the, Poland had so many Germans there. That everything, all the airplanes, you know, I read stories, all the airplanes that the Polish military, they wanted to go to, you know, they were all sabotaged, they wouldn't fly.
Because of the ethnic Germans.
Yeah, Lodz was a city that had 250,000 Jews, 250,000 Polish people, and 250,000 Germans.
No wonder the Polacks hated everybody. They felt outnumbered.
250,000 Germans. So we came back and waited the next day. I'll never forget when the German army came back. Die is gezegd geweest de Duitsen, de militairen.
Did he go on to Lodge?
No, he kept on, yeah. He goes. Ik wart ik aan dus waar ik bij. Die beschikking ben ik niet schrikken. Oh, die is
he also returned.
Oh, die is ook schrikken.
They returned after this first salary.
So, but I remember the gedenk van de Duitse armee raken nog Lodge. Die zijn hier naast de vader zit roepje in de richting van de fabriek.
The gedenkst is
I remember. I'll never forget.
You saw it, describe it for us.
You know, that might compared to, you know, I was a kid, you know, I was 18 years old, almost 19. Yeah, I say they came in, the horses. I've never seen horses like that. We used to know like they call them like Belgian horses. Big horses pulling all those armor, the army, you know, the howitzer, just that power that they came in, you know, it was just
terrifying, which is
terrifying is the word. Terrifying, the way they came in, you know, couldn't believe it. They kept on marching.
Terrorize the population.
Yeah. And then soon after they came in, they started already. We couldn't walk in the streets. They would come out, you know, with trucks around that block and just gather people. And the
gathered Jews.
They gathered up people, and then the Polacks made them wise to the fact that the Jews were circumcised. This way they could distinguish who was a Jew and who was nothing.
Montek wants to say that he remembers more than he does, because he left in 1939 and spent the war in Russia. So his memories of Poland ended when he...
How did he get from Warsaw to Russia?
Let
it go where there's energy.
How did he get to Russia? He's going to tell us.
Mijn kat had gehad zieken. En ze hebben gehad gefragt, mit so einer
Wegen, ja.
emanzipiert die Säge sicher.
The Muslim got
Der Tat ist,
his father had sugar, and they had the means of transport.
They had horses
Horses
and big
and
wagons, you know.
Ja.
So
Ja. In 1931, durch den Kummermann, Kominski gewohnt, Alea, Kirschel, Meier, 43
Philipp Rasen.
In Sebek hat gewohnt, Alea, Kirschel, Meier, 43.
In Mielmoin 41.
Jetzt gewohnt, Alea, Kirschel, Meier.
41.
It's telling their addresses, which I still have.
Next one is
Ja.
Can you translate what just happened?
It's called the 1st of May Street, Piacenza Maya.
Alea, Kirschel, Meier.
The 1st of
Yeah,
May
they-
Street.
I don't understand what just happened.
He said, we lived at the Alea Piacenza Maya. We lived on
In
1st of May
Lux.
Street.
Yeah.
The first place starts to
Ja,
yeah.
Sebek hat gewohnt in einem Neuhaus.
That's Taglita says.
Ja.
Next house to ours.
Sebek was married, it's a
Yeah,
Cosmic
yeah,
house.
yeah.
He was married,
Right.
of course, to his first wife.
Not Frank.
Sebek, not Frank.
Ja.
He lived
Hier
in
lebt
another house.
in
On the
dem
same street.
Haus am gewohnt polnische Offizier.
He lived in a house where also Polish officers lived.
Apartment house.
His brother.
Die polnische Offiziere sind da weggelaufen.
They ran.
Mit den polnischen Armeen sind sie
In the
weggelaufen.
army.
The Polish officers ran or Savick ran?
Yeah.
Ran away to Warsaw or just ran
To
to
Warsaw.
Ja. In
Dispersed.
die polnische Offiziere weiter mal rein zu deutsche Offiziere.
And German officers moved into these dwellings that the
The
Polish
apartments.
officers vacated.
Ja,
It's like that.
Sebek hat gehabt, am Wohnentag zwar am zweiten und am dritten Stock. Ich gewinne eine Wohnung von einem polnischen Offizier am dritten Stock weggelaufen. Es hat besetzt von Deutschen. In einem die ein paar Tage gewesen.
Brother Sebek had a dwelling on the second floor, and it was the one on top, the third floor, and one below him
They were
was
Germans.
vacated. And so Germans moved
Ist er
in.
mitgekommen, der ein Offizier für die Deutschen zu Sebek sehr fein. Und hat ihn gemacht, der Vorschlag. Also wie von der Chava neben
Yeah.
ihm. Ich habe eine Wohnung hier, sei er sich hier. Öfters die nicht dein Wohnung. Und ich habe die zweite, mein
He was approached by a German officer, unbelievably,
To what?
to trade departments. So apparently
Yeah.
the full meaning of their
Yeah.
presence wasn't yet.
Seine Gewinn, also ja, fein.
See, a Hefner, very polite and nice.
Am Gerät.
The trade apartments.
Selbstverständlich war hat den Ball gegeben, wenn sie tun.
Yeah.
What did the German officer
They
approach you
wanted
for?
to trade apartments, because they asked nicely.
Wait, they wanted to trade with your family
Sevick,
or
with
with
Sevick.
Sevick's family?
That's fine.
Sevick's had the nicer apartment.
No,
No, no,
because
no.
they wanted to be
The
together.
building,
Yes,
the building where his brother lived was a new building. And that building, there were Polish officers, but when they ran away, so those two apartments were vacated. So Germans moved in. So one lived above Sevick's apartment and one lived below the apartment. So one of the officers says, you know, since he lives here, why don't we trade? You go down and take this apartment and we'll go up there.
what interests me is, it sounds as if it were just a very ordinary.
They didn't say, get out.
They did, yes.
And so what happened?
Well, that's what he wouldn't have done up then, was this.
Und der hat einen Kontakt mit diesen Deutschen. Sind die
He
gewesen,
said he
mein
had no
Bruder,
contact.
wir haben gewählt mit den Deutschen, wir gewählt, sind die ständig gekommen, sind
They were in touch, you
Nicht
know,
lang, aber
with those two. He was,
es hat
his brother was in touch with these two
Sie gewählt auch
German
gewesen.
officers.
Sie haben doch gehabt, wie heißt es, auf Ordonnanzen, die deutsche Offiziere.
They had the ordnance.
Ordonnanzen.
No, no, do you know what an ordinance is?
They had arms, they had arms.
No.
Like the city law.
No. They had, you know, a soldier that did all the things for
Orderly.
An orderly.
Oh,
Und
servants.
die Ordentlichs haben schon gemacht, was selbst, so mit Sachen, so gemacht.
So Sevick
Yeah.
benefited.
Yeah.
So translate this.
Well, the orderlies did for the
Yeah.
Sevick, some of the things they
Different
did for the
things.
German officers. They cleaned up, they brought nice
Yeah.
things.
So the German orderlies helped.
Yeah, for what I don't know, yes, so.
Ja. Das ist gewinnt.
Das ist gewinnt am Anfang. Wie lange ist das umgegangen?
Das ist auch nicht umgegangen,
Das
nee, aber die Offiziere, nee, erzählen.
Longer than a week.
Erzählen.
This lasted for longer than a week.
Maybe a month, maybe a month.
Maybe a
Some more
month.
now.
In the first days of the occupation.
Die Offiziere haben gesucht, geht zurück. Sie Stein geht frei.
They were friendly officers and they said to each brother, you guys better get out of here. I'm telling you it's not going to be
Yeah,
good.
they warned them, but they, you know, they were.
The German officers told them to get out.
Es hat Kinder,
These were the good Germans.
offen, aber so gesucht.
There were some.
Ja.
They weren't specific, but they
just said it won't be good.
Yeah,
You better go.
better move away from here.
Now, were you still in Lodz at that time?
He's in Los
Sie haben noch gewinnen.
Yeah, he
Well, you were
was
still
She
there.
was in touch with
So
us.
Sevek told you
Jetzt,
this.
ja. Man gewohnt in die Schweiz, die drei Häuser. Man sind die
They live very close to
They lived like they were.
Mein Vater hat geguckt, sich auf Recht gekonnt an die deutsche Firmen. Das war die Deutschen gewesen, alles in der heutigen Klasse, wie die Grenze.
Ja,
Industrie
Class.
bei Deutschen. Sie sind gewesen, die gibt situierte Deutschen. Die beste
The
Geschäfte
ethnic
Deutschen.
Germans
Yeah.
were well situated.
Oh yeah, in Lodz, a lot
They were
of textile, big textile
they were
factories
an upper
were German
class
owned.
economic.
Ja, wenn wir wen mal.
China and Oman.
Ja, das ist mega aus. Jetzt hat man noch auf meiner Eins in der Heben gerät. Auf der Karte, man durchgekehrt, öfters haben wir tun, ja, alle paar Glas.
They were discussing
Now,
now
he
what
did
ought we
the
to do
best,
now.
Uh,
And they,
in the
his
family.
father, in his family, his father suggested
Yeah.
they might be better off in a small town. Perhaps they should all go to Biala Podlaska.
Which is where the grandparents were.
Where the grandparents now were. The buses were.
Aber beschlossen, als ich so ein.
They determined that he should go there and look it over.
Ja, ich habe gekickt mich selber, weil da Frau.
He was free.
Yeah.
Sevek was married.
Ja, ich habe von.
And the Zane was done, was became Martin.
Sehen
If
Sie, wie dort
it's feasible.
Did
Yeah.
Sevek have children then?
No, Ethnisch cannot.
No, his older sister had
Ik
two.
ben niet lang verheiratet. Ik ben niet lang
He was a new bridegroom in this
No,
man.
no time.
Yeah.
Ich kann lange Zeit reden.
Yeah.
En ich bin
He
geflogen.
was getroffen from Biala.
Gezogen von der Piano.
Yeah, Gazol. He was going to go to Biala.
En ik ben eigenlijk in het zoek. Ik ben geflogen bis Warsch.
So he went as far as Warsaw.
In Warsch bin ich auf gewohnt bei die.
Ich bin auch gewesen bei ihr, Natasha. So we left everyone stayed there.
Als ik gewohnt ben.
Translate a bit there.
He says he went as far as Warsaw. And in
Himself,
Warsaw,
by himself.
by himself. And he spent the night with our cousin Esther, the first cousin who lived in Warsaw.
Ja, ik ben daarheen gekomen met Esther. Esther in ganz alleen.
She was all by herself. Und wir Stücken Kinder.
Wusste ich gewesen, ihr Mann und ihr Manns Brüder und ihr Manns Schwester, die Schwester in 80 gewesen, Schwester gewesen. Ihr Mann, sie haben rausgefunden, Einkäufe Lebens, aber sie müssen mal in der Berg war Einkäufe Lebensmittel, haben es Getränke gestohlen, haben es gekostet, verdient abgesagt.
Das ist nicht gewesen, noch der
No, in the minimum, in the minimum.
This is
No
the
laws
beginning
for
and
the
Anfang.
Das
minimum.
hat sie
He
gewiss
found his cousin right alone.
Wochen bis Warsch.
Her husband and all the other men
Weil
were
Warsch
involved
Wochen
went to see if they could gather up stuff,
Ich bin 5 Tage.
whether by whose use or sale during the days they were anticipating.
So she was alone, but her husband was still in Warsaw.
Yeah.
Because they were planning for
We're
the.
planning for something.
They were planning for the trying to.
Die Landesstücke
Were they planning for the?
Ja, bei Nacht haben wir gehört, bin ich gewesen dort und ich bin spät bei Nacht, hätten sie gekommen da, Abu gekommen seine Schwester gewesen bei ihr, seine Schwester.
Yes, her husband's
Die
sister.
zwei Brüder gewesen. Ich komme, wo haben sie gesucht, die Esther hat gesucht, die Schwester, da bin ich da. Ich bin hochgegangen, sie helfen Abu die ganze Leben, die ganze Sache muss umgebringt dort. Dorf.
Oh, they thought
Yeah.
that there was the people
Yeah.
coming back with the produce.
Du sollst gewiss sein, also ihr 10:30.
Yeah, it was about 10:30.
Nun, wir alle hochgegangen. Das ist erst, ich gehe sogar 2 kleine Kinder. Ganz
It's made of
Ganz
all
Kriegs.
that time.
Yeah.
Ganz Kriegs. Gewesen Eltern.
Ja, Sabbath.
Hat sie geblieben, dann ich mit die Schwester gegangen, und hat uns helfen, habe ich mit
Download.
Ich habe Vater im Haus, habe gepasst. Und da sollten wir loben, jeder doch ein deutscher
Soldat.
nicht Soldat, ein deutscher
Hier.
Herr, ein deutscher, wie heißt das, da machen 2 Mann, insgesamt kontrolliert die Gegend. Doch ein deutscher Mann, 2 deutsche Soldaten, muss sie kontrollieren. Und sie sehen in Saarbrücken und Frauen, sie schon noch 10, jetzt noch die Toten war, ich habe uns genug. Auch die erste Dings, immer hat uns. Hat dort, sind geschrocken und gedenkt uns auf die Wehr und ist, alles reingestellt und so, immer uns alle umgeführt, zu den Deutschen. Natürlich gekriegt, da ruft ihn zu Esther, und sie schon die Schwester, mit seinem Brief.
They went down what they thought would be to help unload the wagons that they heard come with what they presumed was produce.
At 10:30.
He and Esther went down.
No, Esther stayed with her little children. She had tiny children, 2 of them.
But
The other young people.
He
did.
and Esther's sister-in-law.
When they got
Sister-in-law,
down,
did they get it?
just as they were about, the wagon was indeed the one they were looking for, and they were about to unload it, they were immediately stopped by 2
Two German
patrols.
a German
A German
patrol.
patrol of 2 guys, strong-armed, a lot of,
Yeah.
and told them
And
to
hold them away
to cease and desist, and they hauled them off. They,
to jail.
wie gesagt,
Aber das Gelingen, was jetzt geführt, schon wieder nach, was jetzt geführt, noch gehört, ich kenne doch den Mann, ist doch gegangen, und dann muss man gefällt, dort in sehr Kasem, was jetzt geführt hat, hieß
they took them to jail.
Ja, was geführt alle nach hieß. Wenn wir 4 Mann, jeder gewinnt eine extra,
They separated them.
nicht jeder gewinnt separat, nicht alle
Just
zusammen.
all, so they separated.
They separated 2 of
themselves.
them.
The 4 of them.
The 4 of them, they separated.
There were,
Now, who were the 4? There.
the 4 was the cousin's husband, his brother, and the sister that he went down to help unload an inn. Those are the 4.
The one that
There were 2
wasn't
brothers and a
picked up-
sister and Motu.
One that wasn't picked up was Esther with the 2 children.
Esther, she was left alone up there.
Till
She
later.
didn't know what was going on. But they never came back.
Interessante Meise.
Yes,
Ich muss jetzt alles, ich hab, keiner hat nicht, wer mit wem du reingegangen, ich hab weitergeführt. Es hat auch im ersten Tag, ist reingekommen, was jetzt so passiert ist. Sie gewesen, ich habe
The second day, they shaved their
aber
heads.
wie schön gesitzen das ist. Wie schön
Mit that nicht gesagt, was wird sagen gesagt, was mit that, oh, because they violated the
Gar
law.
nicht gesagt.
Gar nicht gesagt. Oh, President,
Jeden Präsident habe ich schon beendet.
Already shaved their head.
Das war mir jetzt
They were all, and they were all in separate
Separate
cells.
cells.
Yeah.
Und was ich kriege die Beine gebräut, kann ich nicht essen, weil der Mann gewohnt ist. Also ich bin gesessen, also ich bin gewählt, 10 oder 11.
10 or 11 days, they said.
10 or 11 days.
Were you frightened?
Mother God, that's it. That's Mother God.
Ja, einmal auf was geschlagen
They also
They beat him.
polyglots.
mit der Stimme.
With his
Das
thing.
erste von mir ist mir Katastrophe, das erste von meinem Leben nach hier habe ich Gefängnis, ich habe gewiss, was ist.
First time in his life, he knew it was
In jail.
confined.
Was ist geregnet?
With a beating to it.
Noch, du sagst, ja, ich kenne noch den Mann, einmal sitzen wir sind da allein.
Yeah.
Ja,
Alone.
ja, wir sind allein, kräfst du die Zeit,
Thinking what's gonna be, you know?
Ich durfte hier ins Kind da rein, der Deutsche hier.
Door then opens and comes a German officer.
Ja. Winograd, Montag, ja. Sie sind frei. Du gehst, bist
You
frei.
are free, you can go
You
home.
can go.
Ja, hat noch gesagt, heute ist Freitag. Heute ist Freitag. Und Freitag ist Schabbos. Und du bist frei. Also,
This is Friday and it's before
Tomorrow is
Shabbos,
Shabbos.
you go home.
He said tomorrow is Shabbos.
ja, und du sitzt da und du bist gewählt ab hier, aber das bist gewählt durch 10 also ich auf das ist gewählt ab und da. Alles bist frei.
That's it, that was your charge, you were
What were you charged with?
with breaking the curfew
The
after
curfew,
10, a minor thing, it's
Yeah.
after 11 days and a beating. He sent home. Okay.
And the German said, today's Friday, tomorrow Shabbos, he said.
Tell him we know you're a Jew, this is, yeah.
Der Kopf ist aber gewesen.
But his head is shaved.
Schreck.
Terrible.
Ich habe schon gedacht, dass ich da wusste. Ich war da wusste ich doch, schon verstanden. Die zwei Brüder.
Also, they ordered the They let the others also go.
Wo soll Frau Whisky später ich gemacht hat, dann würde ich auch nicht gewusst. Sie zwei Brüder gewesen. Das Mädel und Mädchen nicht gewesen. Wo soll Frau Whisky gewesen? Also immer in seinem Stil. In die Schwester gewesen. Sie gesetzt die Leute, die so gewähnt die ganze Zeit, die noch geschrieben, sondern ein Kind, der Zeit immer hat sie auch Whisky gemacht, zwei, drei.
They let the woman out. She was sitting and moaning and wailing that she had a young child and all. They let her out after the second or the third day. The two men were let out with
Sie auch ist die wird schon gemacht dort auch mit dem sie sind gelaufen schon zu Polizei sie mit dem in sie hat das bewegt am uns frei.
She was still manipulating to let them go, he thinks. But you can see those were different days than when the Nazis really took final. That's very interesting. They were still able to manipulate.
Wenn man eingeführt die das in
Der Paschis.
Doch nicht da, ja, in Paschis.
Und no, the bands,
the lodge.
Ja, das ist schon gewesen.
Naja,
He's asking when the bands were put on. He needed to know for something.
Schau, wenn er so immer Whisky kommt. Ich habe die 11 Tug und ich bin jetzt gefragt. Ich habe den Mann verkauft, die 11 oder 10 Stück der Boy in der die zwei Brüder sind mit uns gehängt. Also sonst würde ich uns mitnehmen. Aber sie noch nicht das gegeben, das kann ich nicht
He didn't need anything.
Ich bin krank auf Mugen. Ich habe gemeint, ich habe das Freude und Spaß.
So he saved those 10 pieces of bread and the two brothers devoured it later. So starved. Yeah.
Ich habe gemeint, dass ich am besten das Freude gestorben.
Here then also he was afraid to eat that bread. They didn't eat it.
So he didn't eat anything.
Yeah.
So he starved his ulcer through healing.
Mit schwarzes Brot, ich mal
It's got triple Wasser, das
kann ich gehabt haben, ja, jetzt.
Das da hängen gegangen.
Nein, ich will Wasche.
Wasche, das ist das old kid in Piala from Boston. Remember, this is en route to see my grandmother. Sounds like little
Okay.
So then what happened when you got out?
So let's
Trinking am nicht schon zu essen.
Yeah.
Nur ach, ein bisschen ab in Glück bleiben, das ein bisschen erholen.
They said, please stay a few days so you can recover from your experience.
You went back to stay with Esther?
Yes, yes.
Ja, mit zwei
With the two brothers who were there. It was terrible. It was a young boy had nowhere.
Naja, jedenfalls in 2, 3, ich habe ein bisschen erholt, Fäschen schon gemacht. Ja, Fäschen zu rein.
He's thinking of the whole now, I won't go to Piala, just the whole thing.
Fäschen schon hier mit Piala, diese Kreuzung verlangt.
How do I look going to Piala?
Sie ist doch gegangen, ich habe ja tut, wie ich habe gesagt, das tun. Sie ist auch gekommen zu mir,
After a few days, an old friend from London came to see him.
En de hemel bezicht, daar weet je dat ik ben van de schule. Dat is niet de carrière. Op de hemel bezoek, als ik ben ergens ja, dat denk je, dat waardje, als ik kinderen gewist de waardje bij dienst, hier ben.
So he was on the way to. Everybody told everybody where they said they could find him.
This friend. There was a friend at school, friend of his, was going to Warsaw, and he was asking about him. He went to his parents as ways. So he says he was going to Biala, but if you want to find out exactly where he is, this is the address to this Esther's address, and they'll tell you where he is. So he came up, and he was still up there.
And there he was. Oh, magazine. De heer Beesman had geherkt van de Beesman niet. Nou, het schrik als je niet moest doen, dan word je toch
He came to tell him the message. They haven't heard from you, they're concerned. But do not come back to Lodge, they're already wearing the yellow bands.
We had a band like blue, white, and bands, you know, we had to wear with a sign, the Jude, you know, Jew.
So they told him, they sent a message to him, nothing to come
Das
back.
kann eigentlich nicht mehr.
Du sagst, gewiss sein, in Oktober oder noch?
Kennen Sie?
Oktober. Das wird
39.
Das ist
Ja,
ganz
ja,
klar.
alles.
39. October
39.
39.
Die Hosche nicht was zu tun.
Yeah, nothing to go back for.
In deine Tate mit deinem Mann wählen,
Russland.
Nicht so much gewesen.
Ja.
Aber wo so wie, ich hab noch, die Manneszeit ist gewinnt in Chemnitz.
Vitamina Fege, his
Yeah.
mother's family,
Nee, von Brest-Litovsk.
from Brest-Litovsk.
Brest-Litovsk.
The Rosenfelds were from,
Yeah, in the
his
mother's
mother's
side.
family, Rosenfeld, was from
In
Brest-Litovsk.
In dem sich gewinnt, eingeteilt hat, deutsche Herzen Russland. In dem
According to the division, Brest-Litovsk was,
In dem
was
On the Russian side.
was already Russian.
They,
Yeah, family.
This is the Stalin-Hitler pact. The Stalin-Hitler pact.
And he and his friend and many others ran to places like Brest-Litovsk because they wanted to be on the Russian side. They felt more comfortable.
see, when the Germans
That's why
came
they
in,
ran.
there's a river by the name of Bug. And on the other side of Bug was Brest-Litovsk, that was the Russian territory. And on this
That was
side
all
of the
above the
river,
river.
that was the borderline. On the other side was already Russia,
was Russia.
and that's where he went, because he had family
And
there.
Azoyas to go up this.
And Biala was on this side. You know,
They
Biala-
had trouble crossing the river, if they went through checkpoints.
I don't know at that time yet.
He never went home again.
Wat is gecheckt dat
He
op
ran
de
on
yes.
and
Wat ze dat zo
that side.
Dat is hij.
That's the story, how he went.
Wat
So-
ik denk. Wat ik denk.
It's much more dramatic than I thought. He went.
That is about it. You know, to struggle to deliver.
It happened that way.
Did Harold asked, did you have trouble getting across the river?
Het is een schaatswerkheid naar het schijnt.
Nu ja, ze weet.
There were
Had je schleppers, want dan je vier.
there was
There are people
there were
there.
guides for money. They
Er was
would
nog eens gehabt, er was niet
And he had money with him.
This got geld, that's it.
Gott hat es gegeben.
Hat es,
Aber es kann sein, nicht kein
And was is gemeint auf dein
Dus ook met
Lincoln, that's all he had.
all he had to do was wearing.
And did he ever hear anything from his family again?
Not until he came back.
Das ist das Letzte, was das gehört von der Familie. Mehr nicht. It was the,
Not.
he went as a scout to Biala, but he never came back.
En nu begin nog Brest-Litovsk.
Rest of the
Brest-Litovsk.
Meer maken kan
And
niet
then, did you stay with the family in Brest?
Yeah, die
Yeah,
gaan niet
and
studeren.
you stayed with the aunt.
Stayed with an aunt.
For how long?
Yeah, for how long?
Wie lang was het geweest bij me? A half year. Dat was gemeint ruhig.
Wat ik met de Russen?
Ja, aber ruhig. Ze nog niet, de armee is niet geweest.
Russian,
It was quiet geweest ruhig. It was quiet. All quiet on the front.
This is before the
The Russian army was there.
Germans and Russians started to fight.
Dat ik niet mooi denk.
En in 6 Monaten ben je gevallen. Ben je gegaan.
Op 6 Monaten haben die Russen gesucht. Die Russen gekommen von der russischen Welt. Wer, die alle Menschen, die auf dort geboren sind, gelebt sind, gewesen automatisch russisch.
All the people who lived there were automatically
war.
Russian. Before the war, were automatically Russian citizens.
Sind automatisch geworden.
Automatic.
Ins sind wir noch nicht gewählt.
They were not, of course,
Yeah,
like that. They were not indigenous people.
Haben die Russen gesagt, also, sie machen eine Registration. Wer will zurückfliegen nach Deutschland und wer nicht, muss man eine russische Bürger.
If you don't want to go back to Germany,
The Russians
the Russians said, then you have to sign in, you want to become a Russian citizen.
either go back to Germany where you came from, or if you want to stay here.
Wenn sie so in Deutschland meinten, sie gemeint Polen.
Poland.
You go back to German territory. Sign on for German Russian citizens.
Wer will zurück nach
Was
Deutschland?
ist das
And then you have to go in the Russian army.
Russischer Bürger, Karten mit dem Mann da. Ja, Russen aber wenn. Und zurück nach der Armee.
Months afterwards, he'd like to go home again.
No.
He said, I'm not signing up.
No, I'm not signing up.
I'm not signing up, I want to
I
do.
want to take care of my parents.
Yeah,
I see what's happening.
he thought that once he signed up as a Russian, he wouldn't be able to go back to his parents. He says, I don't want to sign up, I want to go back to lodge, to my parents.
Dus gemeentekisten dat niet helpen, dat is
Selbstverständlich.
Maar wat nou?
Das heißt, das betrifft. Du bist ein völlig schöner russischer Bürger, kannst du mit dem Foto.
Ze hebben ook niet gelast dat er zo'n zurückgeht von Lodge.
Ich weiß nicht, aber so ein kein russischer Bürger,
Want dan moet die alles op een televisie.
die alle so haben gesucht, sie will nicht werden kein russischer Bürger. Ich habe gesucht, in Zelle, in Familie dort. Wir will nicht werden kein russischer Bürger. Aber die uns alle arrestiert und uns weggeschickt.
Dat is Sibir.
Der Vater.
Das ist nicht gewusst. He
He
didn't know what the outcome would be. When those who signed saying we do not wish to be Russian citizens, they rounded them up and they shipped them to Siberia. That's how he got to Siberia. That's the Russians sent him to Siberia.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out Siberia was probably the best place to be by later in that years.
He didn't anticipate that he would be removed totally from circulation. I guess he thought he'd get about this. Yeah, if you don't want to be a citizen, you're our enemy. You're our enemy. It's our son. So they round you up.
And sent you like by train to Siberia?
By train, yeah. Met de baan, met de baan.
A baan. A camel train, huh?
Ja, een camel car.
Camel car.
Ja. Volgende stapvoer, maar 6 weeks by train.
And a nice trip to Siberia.
A nice trip.
It was called the Orient Express.
Orient Express.
No, they just.
And did you have food?
Zijn gegeben Essen, fragt sie? Was haben gegeben Essen? Breit.
Ja, Breit, dat ben ik in de vriend. Tussen geweest in de Twisse, dort in lager, dat is arbeid.
Op de baan.
Op de baan is het eerst.
Dat moet gegeven, ja. Als ik Freud met Wasser, aber es haben wir aber ruhig gestellt. Mit Geschenke geblieben, ob es gegeben.
Dus men eenmaal gesagt, dat zijn de wijsgegeven op die ulcers.
Dat ben ik gezien geworden.
He said there he recovered from his ulcers from starvation. He didn't aggravate his ulcers.
See, that's how he got to Russia.
And
See,
that's how he
and
got
when I ran away, when I came back after that shooting in there, I came back to Lodge, and I waited until the Germans came in, and this was the beginning of September, right? And it got progressively worse.
Nog geen gedanke, dat is de man. Ze nog geen gedanke, een gewene frist op de grond van nog niet nog Wilhelmina, op de hele bezit in mijn arbeitsbund. En toen gedacht, dort, we kennen de Amerika, hoe maakt contract met ons,
They thought perhaps they called him Lithuania.
Maar dat is niet gelungen.
Wait, from Siberia to Lithuania?
No, from Brest.
Before he went on with the Russians, sign against the Russians, he thought he might get to Lithuania, make decent contacts there, perhaps with Americans, families.
He didn't know that the Russians took over Lithuania. He thought that Lithuania is a separate country. He'll be able to make contact with the outside world. You know.
The Nazis took their part, and the Russians took their part.
Aan de Duitsland besetzt Polen is het al geween, de Ordnung met alles.
As soon as the Germans went to Poland, the Order.
Bald gewinn als Strand, alles gewinn da. An der Russland besetzt dort ist Polen, das andere Ding ist gewinn Atomwaffen. Als die Military ist das Soldaten, das Soldaten ausgewinn.
Sloppy. The Russians were sloppy with their discipline.
Von Anfang an, bis man erst gemerkt hat, dass sie in Russland geschickt haben, instantly eingefahren waren, so ich bin nicht.
He didn't dream this would be the outcome of this.
Sehr Logik in
But what is
He says their logic was logical. If you want to go back, you're our enemy. And we will send you to a work camp. In Siberia.
Okay.
And thanks to this, you know, he's alive.
Right.
Sure.
Because even in the Russian army,
He's
there
alive
was
without ulcers.
Right.
That's
So
what's your...
now you're going to tell your story.
Yeah, so when the Germans came in,
he has to go. He's going to smoke a cigarette to bring back more.
so it became progressively.
You know what is all.
Now Jack doesn't
Now
need a
Jack
cigarette.
okay.
So when the Germans came in, and it got to be very bad. We had to stay all night in front of a bakery to get a piece of bread. I'll never forget, we stood all night, even my mother, may she rest in peace, we stood the whole family in a bakery for bread. And it was near our apartment house, maybe a block away. And in the morning, the 2 German policemen came to keep order before they opened the doors. And the Polacks would go out of the line and would point to tell the Germans that you there, point to the Jews. And the Germans would go over, house, and after standing all night long, we wouldn't get any bread. The Polacks told the Germans, who's a Jew?
What was Ralph's name?
Out.
Yeah. It got worse and worse. The Germans would come to the neighborhood, and catch all the people in the street, and most of them, of course, were Jews. The non-Jews, they would let go. The Jews, they would take forced labor to their quarters there, to clean toilets, to do the worst kind of work.
In-laws.
In-laws, yeah. This was in 1939.
This is before they liquidated together.
No, this was in 1939.
Yeah, it was early on.
Before they started again. This was like in October, in November, and we decided, my brother and I, we decided that it's no good. It's no good. We had to hide out. They beat us. See, I don't know.
Ik heb het wel wisten die ze moest gezien in het lager. En ze hebben het wisten, maar de hoogste op de lager.
Yeah, that's it.
So we decided that, and mother too, I had 3 sisters at home, and mother and nephew, and my brother-in-law was already sent away someplace to work by the Germans. I don't know where he went. So we decided that we'll run away also to Russia.
All of it.
And yeah, so first we said we'll go to Biała. And my sister Henia went with us, with me and my brother, and my older sister went with us. And we said that we'll go to Warsaw, we'll stay in Warsaw. And Henia, because we heard that there were beatings on the border to Russia, so she would go from Warsaw, she would go alone. As a woman, she would go alone to investigate how the crossing is, if it's possible to go.
It should be said that Biała was en route to Russia.
Well, Biała was very short from the river, not far from the Russian border.
Wasn't that unusual to send a woman alone to do that?
No. At that time, no. She was a young woman in her 20s, so she was supposed to go investigate. So when we left Lodz by train, before we came to Warsaw, a German officer went up to the train, and he picked on me and grabbed a hold of me and threw me down the train. Threw me off the train, and here the train moves on, and my sister and my brother, they go, and I'm behind. So I had to wait a day, stay there. I don't remember where I slept. I think on the station there. And the next day, the next possible train, I hopped the train and I went to Warsaw, and we met over at Estes. But so when I came to Estes, so my sister went on right away. She went on by train towards Biała. My sister went on towards Biała, and Esther didn't have enough room. Esther lived in one room. And in that room was her brother, his brother, her husband's brother, and the sister, and the 2 children. There was not enough room for me and my brother too. So we had a cousin living there from my father's side, who lived not far from Esther. Right across there was a prison, a very famous prison in Polish history in Warsaw, Pawiak. And she lived across the street from that prison, and we talked with her, and she said it's all right, we can come and stay with her. And there was also a sister of hers from Lodz who came to live with her. And I'll never ask her about the comical thing. One evening, when we moved from Esther to this cousin, my brother was walking in front of me, and I was carrying a big thing. I had inside couple pillowcases and a couple dawn covers. You know, and I was sort of bulky thinking. I was walking in the street with it. All of a sudden, 2 German officers. Halt, stehen bleiben. So one German says to me, "Was hast du hier?" And my brother was standing aside. He sort of disowned me at that time. "Was hast du hier?" I didn't know German, so I said to him in Yiddish, I say, "A kitchen and a Zudek, and a Zidek." Yeah, a pillow and a you know, comforter. Yeah. So he starts squeezing me and says, "Hast du das geklaut?" Meaning in German, "Did you steal it?" And I didn't know what that word meant. I thought when he pushed it, I thought when I squeezed it in like that, I said, "Yeah," I say, "Yeah." So he says to me, "Hast du das," like this, "Hast du das geklaut?" I said, no, that's mine, you know. "No, that's mine." He made a gesture when I stole it. "No, that's mine." Let us go. So we stayed in with our cousin. We had some money, and we left Lodge on December the 3rd. December the 3rd, we left Lodge.
1939.
And then after a couple days, my sister came back from her trip to Biala.
She got
to Biala, and she told us that you can't cross the border now because the Germans, they're beating, that we can't cross.
They're standing at the
So she went back to Lodge by train, and my brother and I, we stayed with that cousin there. We had some money. Everything was expensive. And I don't remember how long it took, and the money disappeared. So we had somebody, I think it was our neighbors from Lodge, had some relative who had a son who looked like a German. This boy, he must have been about 18 years old. Blonde, tall, blonde, blue-eyed, didn't look like a Jew. And this boy was traveling to Germany. Nobody bothered him. And he would buy stuff from Germany like playing cards, razor blades, cigarette lighters, stuff like this. He would buy it for next to nothing in Germany. And in Warsaw, we would take it from him. I think he had other customers too. And we would sell it. We would stand in the street of Nalewkis in Warsaw. It was a Jewish street. And we'd sell it and we'd make a living.
So there was still trade going on.
Yeah.
A lot of information.
Yeah, this was already the beginning of 1940. The beginning of 1940.
So it didn't close in completely.
I'll never forget one time, and dinners we used to eat. There was a house, in one of the buildings of this on this Nalewki Street. There was a private couple. They cooked dinners. It was on the 2nd floor. And we used to go every day up there for dinner. I don't remember how much it was. It wasn't expensive, but dinner had like some soup and maybe a little piece of meat, a lot of bread, of course, to stuff ourselves up. I'll never forget one day we sitting there, my brother and I, we sitting and eating dinner. All of a sudden, it's quiet. We take a look. There's a German officer and about 3 soldiers with him. Come in, and he says, it was a long room, and the tables were set alongside the window, a long narrow room. Alongside the window were some tables with chairs, and in the middle of the room there were some tables and chairs, and against the inside wall tables, and that's where we're sitting eating. He comes in, looks around, he says, "Alle Juden diese Seite." All Jews on this side. So we go over the one side, away from the window, and he says like this. Ich warte 5 Minuten und das ganze ausländische Valuta soll daher auf dem Tisch sein. Wenn nicht, they had guns, those Luger guns, you know, and pointing like this with his gun. Wenn nicht, 5 Leute werden erschossen.
I'm waiting 5 minutes. Go ahead.
I'll wait, and the Namenratsgau Fertig of Nalewki Zibitzen. He says that I'm waiting 5 minutes. All foreign money
should be here on the table. If not, I'll take out 5 people and they'll be shot. And he walks out. And they walk out. And right away, you see people had, all the people that were eating there, there were businessmen who were making business in the streets, All they had, so you could, if I had my head on my shoulder, I would have gotten 1 million Polish zlotys. They were taking the money, Polish money, and stuffing it under the tables, under the mirrors, They were afraid, but nobody put out any dollars. About 3 minutes later, they come back. And this says, ich wiederhole, I repeat. 2 more minutes and 5 people will be shot if all the foreign money won't be on the table. And again, nobody put out.
Foreign meaning German money or?
Foreign, meaning like dollars and pounds.
Like
Ausländische Valuta. Yeah. Not German or Polish money. Ausländische.
Yeah.
2 minutes later, they come in. He looks and points to one man. Sie, come with my hair. Points to one man, come here. They went in a different room, and after a little think, we hear a shot. He comes out, and nobody put out any money, and again, Sie. And took about 3 people like this in there. Then he comes out, and he starts calling. Das meint of Polish, of Deutsch, Meister. Meister, zum Ballerbuch ist er Meister.
Sir.
Yeah. Wo ist der Schlüssel? Where's the key? He wanted the key to the door. And he couldn't find the key, and he walked out, and we are all standing maybe 5 minutes. And then the owner goes to the door, look out, and they're gone. And they're gone. So right away we started running down the steps.
Were these men indeed shot? Were they?
Later we found out they didn't shoot him.
They fired.
They fired, They didn't. It was a private initiative. An officer
Yeah, it was not.
They
There
wanted
must
to
have
tell
been
you.
a lot of
Okay.
private
So,
initiatives.
but we stayed away already from the place. We didn't go back there. Als we een avondje alleen met 5 zenders, dan gewoon met een game. I'll never forget. So our money, so we stayed there till it was about March. In March we saw the newspaper from Lodz, a German paper from Lodz, that they're going to close the ghetto. So I said to my brother, look, they're going to close the ghetto, we're going to be here, I want to go back. Now, my mother, my sisters, they were without a man. I said, what will we here? My brother didn't want to go back. But I said, I'm going back. I'm going back.
You were in Warsaw, but you wanted to return.
We couldn't go to Russia. And so I decided to go back. And of course, he went back. And
What did it mean to close the ghetto?
They're going to seal off.
they're going to
the
put the Jews in the ghetto and close it with,
They created the ghetto.
They created the
They
ghetto.
created the ghetto.
What was the ghetto? The ghetto, zo'n in März, So like in March, they decided they wanted to close the ghetto. So we had to smuggle, because they declared already the German Reich, that part of Germany. So we had already to smuggle, illegally, so to speak, to get into the ghetto. So, no. This wasn't the ghetto yet. We came in to Lodz. We had to, the Germans shouldn't catch us. And we also lived on the same street.
Sie hat gemisst von noch Warsche, ungefähr. Wenn ich von der Weg komme, soll gemisst schon sein, September, Mitte Oktober, Ende Oktober.
En hier van de week 3 Dezember.
Ende Oktober. In der Warsche bin ich geblieben ungefähr,
11 days in jail.
in November. Bis November.
Amonat.
Nee,
Nicht Amonat, nicht
in November bin ich noch weg.
En hier nog.
Nicht noch Russland.
Noch,
noch
Westwärts.
En hier geweest van 3 Dezember, ben ik geweest bis März. From 3rd of December till March, we were still in Warsaw. And then when we came back to Lodz,
aber ich kann schreiben, Kabrite. Aber ich würde mit dem Geld verlassen. In der Tat, er kann gehen mit seinen Fans, mit seinen Fußballern und sagen,
But his father had a notion that Gallop and Luster worked out. He could load up the wagons and horses from his business.
Die weiß, en daar was voor het aan daar hadden als voorspellen bij de stier, bij de film. Wat Duitsland besiegt, wat Duitsland besiegt, so called game.
I'll get through Jack's.
Another time. When he wants to tell is what the camp was like in the Soviet.
So maybe we should plan another time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we'll see.
Let Jack finish a little and then we'll do more tomorrow.
All right.
So we came back to Lodge, and we still lived on the same street. As a matter of fact, they lived number 35. Then when, you know, this was an outside street, so then was 39, 37, 39, we lived 41. And his brother lived 43. So we lived on the same street with 3 houses separating us. So we came back to our home, and we had to already, after a few days, we had to start moving to the ghetto. There was still snow on the ground, I remember.
What is to move?
So we built some kind of like a little sled, and we put it on the stuff on the sled, and we would pull it towards the ghetto. They took what was the ghetto? They took the slum area of Lodge, like in Denver, 5 Points. Yeah, they took the slum area of Lodge. And all the Polacks, all the non-Jews who lived there, had to leave, and the Jews from outside that area had to. So they went into our apartment, and we had to go. So my mother had a cousin, Cepelinski, Liebe. No, an Cepelinski, sein Schwester. Dat gaat 2 Schwestern met Brida Lodge. Goldie had 2 uncles and an aunt. And no, 2 aunts and an uncle. Her father's brother and 2 sisters in Lodge. So one of the sisters lived in that part of town where the ghetto was supposed to be. She was alone with her husband, and she had on the 5th floor, she had 2 rooms. So she offered us 1 room.
So you were able to move into
So we moved into one room, 8 people. We moved in a narrow room, narrower than this. It was about from this wall to the door, and about this length. 8 people. And it was the end of the building. It's a 5-story. Winter time, the snow was built up on the wall, the outside wall. There was no heat, so the snow, the wall was covered. So we had to move like this. We moved to the ghetto this way, and this is how we got into the ghetto. And then in May.
Did you have food?
Well, in the beginning, before right away, when they locked the ghetto, so they created like a small Jewish country.
The rules were
we couldn't use.
They
created Jewish money. As a matter of fact, I have it home. I have it back. I have it some, you know. Jewish money, the Jewish post office, Jewish fire department, Jewish police, everything Jewish. We had no contact with the outside of the ghetto. Warsaw was different. See, Warsaw was different. Warsaw still had, through the underground sewer lines, they had contact with the outside world.
Lodge was cut off.
We were cut off from the world. We didn't know what was going on. And before, wait a minute, when the Germans came in, this was before we still ran away, must have been sometimes in October. Everybody who had a radio had to turn it in.
So there'd be no contact.
If not, if they said if they'll find somebody after that day with a radio, he'll be shot. And they shot plenty of Jews who didn't give back the radio. Die is nog geweest met de Duitse Geist? No. In Duitse Geist ook in de radio's? No. Die was niet geweest.
He was gone.
Yeah, he was gone already.
Can we make another day?
I remember we had a radio, a big, you know, the old-fashioned radio.
die Mäure gewesen, also die Stärke.
I'll turn this off. You
Ich
can.
bin gegangen auf die Gasse und da gekippt, wie das auf
You would like to vanish when you saw him walking.
He said he couldn't imagine the fear again because Terry didn't get that.
He said that you could not imagine the fear at that time, just seeing, you know,
The sight of a German
the
soldier.
sight of
we were
German
great.
soldiers.
Das ist
It was
gesehen.
terrifying.
So wie ein
Its size, its authority, everything else, its armaments.
Ja.
You hope they wouldn't.
When they would
notice.
walk in the street, we had to get off the sidewalk.
There are things we don't think about that are so painful.
You know,
such as
you
how children
can't, you know, you can't explain
It is so dreadful.
our feelings. You can't explain. You know, like I was
It's an
telling,
alley- it's an
yeah, like,
alley-
like in the concentration camp later on. Who get like we in the ghetto we were joking. We joking that God converted. He became a German. He abandoned us. He became a German. You know. And who can explain, you know, the hopelessness, getting up in the morning, putting back on the lice-infested jacket, you know. They gave us in Auschwitz before they sent us to the work camp. They gave us underwear made out of paper, and the paper was crinkled paper, such crinkled where the lice could, you know, sit in those. So what we used. When we used to go to the toilet, of course there was no toilet, we used to cut off a piece of paper. Underwear we used as toilet paper until we used it all up, you know. Dirty, you know, that's what we... And then we used to put, we had a pair of pants with the striped pants and jacket, and this was lice infested. And then the epidemic of typhus broke out, you know. Who can explain? You know, we had to get up in the morning, it was still raining or snowing, get up and wear those wet things. The lice were eating us alive, and so we were, you know, praying. If there's a God, we shouldn't get up in the morning. That's not, because there's no hope. There was no hope. You know, everything was so hopeless. It worked and worked and worked. And if you didn't produce so much, you know, they didn't give you that water, you know, with some cabbage floating around. This was our lunch, you know. So that's what they gave us. And then at one time we didn't have anything. Later, one time we got bread. You know, those were those square loaves that the Germans were, you know, the German army was eating. And that bread was all green, all moldy. That bread we got. I look at this, how am I going to eat it? So I took a little bit. I took a little bit of water. So I thought I'll throw the bread in the water. All that mold will come to the top. I'll swim it off, and the rest of it. Boy, it looked like garbage, like sewer thing. I had to throw it away because that would eat it. So next day when we got another piece of bread, so we ate it with the thing. The dust was coming out. We were eating the dust of the mold was coming out. We ate it, and then this one we didn't have this. So the Germans, for themselves, you know, because there were German workers that led our thing. I had a German who helped me in there. A German from Munich, from his town, that I found after the war. He helped me. So for the Germans, they brought in some potatoes for the German kitchens, and they put them in the ground for the winter, so they won't freeze. But they picked a bad terrain, it was a damp terrain, wet, and all the potatoes, they got rotten there. So the way in the morning, wintertime was so dark when we went, we knew where it was. So you would run and dig little by little a hole, and finally we would get into those potatoes. You put in like an oven, they were fermenting. We would take out, and I remember, I'll never forget talking about humor. One of the guys filled up a cement bag, you know, an empty cement bag, filled it up with those rotten potatoes. And when we got to the place we got to work, before the Germans arrived, so he hid it in a place not far from a German engineer had his table with the plans on it. And later, I'll never forget it, this German was walking around back and forth. What stinkt da? What stinks here? Because it was rotten, it was stinking like hell, and he didn't know what stinks in that place where he was sitting. And then later, when we were about to go home, this German from far noticed that this guy was pulling out that sack. He started running after me. If he had a gun,
See, those Germans, they didn't train guns. These were like CB, you know, construction battalions. If he had a gun, he would have shot it. Oh, and he dropped it in the end. So we used to get those potatoes. There was winter time, and our barracks in the camp were in the ground. Just the gable, the roof, was sticking out, and that thing was covered with green, with grass. So from the airplanes, they wouldn't see that that's a camp. So there was under the gables. We slept right under the gables on straw, full of course, lice infested. We had a blanket, cover us, a thin blanket, and there was a walkway right directly under the ridge, you know. So winter time they let us take in a little stove. So we would take those potatoes. They were so rotten that when you pulled it in the skin, it would just peel off. And then we would squash it and lay it on top of that stove. Right away it would become, all that starch would become white, and was stinking like hell. At that time, we didn't get any bread. I remember one Sunday we had.
You would then eat the potatoes?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, and how would it be? And see, we went to camp together with Lithuanian Jews. We were 150 Jews from Lodz and 500 Lithuanian Jews. When we came to that working camp, they were there already, and they took the best working spots. They took, and we had the worst ones, you know, real hard labor. And then they came, I don't remember from where, but they came like this. They were so strong. What they could do, two of them, we had to have from the ghetto. We came from the ghetto lodge, the skeletons. We had to have 10 guys to pick up what two of them could pick up. So they didn't believe that we couldn't do it. They said that we are, you know, pretending that we don't want to work. And the Germans, because of them, the Germans started eating us. And I remember they were throwing out of the kitchen potato peels, this big. In the ghetto, I'll never forget, my mother received a prescription from the doctor for 1 kilogram of potato peels. I remember I went to the kitchen with this prescription, and they gave me 1 kilogram potato peels. And I'll never forget, I woke up in the middle of the night, a little lamp was burning in our apartment in the ghetto, in that one room, and Mother was sitting there and peeling those peelings. She was cleaning those peelings up. So I said to Mother, I said, Mom, why are you sitting there going to sleep? Kijk, Mom said, clean of a recept from a doctor, I killed it in the ghetto. So when we saw that they were throwing out such potato peels, we wanted to take it and cook it and eat it, yeah? They wouldn't let us. Pelen said ribkes, you know. Zarazes, you started calling us names. That we will bring in all kind of diseases, you know, by eating that stuff, we'll bring in all kind of diseases. But later, when things got real bad, and they started already to starve too, so they started eating those potatoes too. And the Litvakers, they don't say stink. They say herzach. You can listen, you know. They said different. So they said, it's herzach hameichel. It stinks, it's a pleasure. So I remember one Sunday, every second Sunday we had off from work. So I remember the camp director, the German, who came to our back, came over, and he wanted to walk in, but he went back from that stench, from those potatoes. So yes, what are we doing? How we are doing it? So we said, we do this. So he says, Jekke, ohne Salz? Without salt? Yeah. So this is the German, you know. So I said, we don't have any salt. So he says, go to the kitchen and tell them that I said to give you salt. So we had put a little bit salt on those stinking potatoes. But it was delicious, you know, we didn't have anything else. But eerst is dat vol de kap, afgeleid door Heidelberg. Misschien het kap, je dan moet de komen aan. Je zit onder aangaan, dus dat is een zekerheid, zodat er hier zo maakt. Dus het lijkt het wel, maar zodat ohne Salz. Ja, gibt was. Ja, ja. Jetzt kriegt's you know, but you know, it's just unbelievable.
Люди готовы были совместно висеть в russische Lager.
Ja.
So lesen den Gulag von Solzhenitsyn, der Zellisten.
Oh, did you read the book,
No.
Gulag by
Yeah, Solzhenitsyn.
If you just, you
He'll
know,
describe
This
what
is-
was in those
this is
camps. He
original.
was one of those camps
This is
in
original.
Siberia.
this is
Yeah.
original. I don't